Welcome to
Oh-My-Geekers,
a place where we geek out about our favorite subjects. I'm Jeanette.
And I'm Zeke.
This week's episode is part 2 of my interview with Zeke on the life of J.R.R. Tolkien, or Tolkien. So I first want to talk about Tolkien's life in Africa. Zeke, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, he was born in Bloemfontein on January 3rd, 1892. So Bloemfontein is a city in South Africa, and a lot of English businessmen, including Tolkien's father, who was a bank clerk, moved to South Africa for a better income.
Oh, wow. Okay, so how did he come to, move to England?
They decided to move to England when he was, I believe, 4. During the trip, his father died.
During the trip there to England? From how do you say that again?
Bloemfontein.
Bloemfontein. Since it's in South Africa, it's a very highly populated, was it highly populated?
It's a highly populated area compared to the rest of the African continent.
Okay. So it was not occupied by, it wasn't occupied by the British.
It was occupied by the British. It was a British town.
Was it a colony or?
They lived in a British colony in South Africa.
Oh, okay. So it was colonized by
the British Empire.
Oh, okay. And so they're moving from South Africa, the family. They're moving out of South Africa?
Out of South Africa.
Okay. And the father was a banker.
Yes, he was a banker.
A bank teller or?
A bank clerk.
Oh, a bank clerk. Okay. And so as they're moving to England,
his father has a fever and dies.
Oh, whoa. So what kind of, was it the Spanish influenza? I'm not good with times.
I think it was an influenza. I don't think it was the Spanish one. Mm-hmm. I think that's after World War I.
Oh, okay.
But living in Africa is not very healthy if you haven't lived there a long time, because you're not immune to all the diseases, mm-hmm. and it will affect you faster than any other disease.
Oh, okay. So his father died, and did he have any siblings?
Yeah, he had one brother who was called Hillary.
Oh.
It's not a girl's name.
Oh, okay.
I think it's a unisex name.
So give us a little background on his family.
So he came from a German sort of family, but they were very English.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but he didn't really see a lot of his family during that time because his mother converted to Catholicism, so both sides of the family disowned them.
What did they believe?
In Anglicanism.
Okay, so what's the difference between Catholicism and Anglicanism?
Catholicism is Roman,
mm-hmm.
and Anglicanism is English. That's basically summed up in a nutshell.
Okay. So her parents and even his parents, of the mother and father of Tolkien, were both Anglican?
They were both Anglican.
Oh, okay. All right. So where did they move to England when they moved from South Africa?
They moved to the West Midlands. You could say it's west, but it's only a teeny bit west. It's just right in the middle of England. It's in a place called Birmingham. In Birmingham, there's a lot of city, but there's also a lot of country.
Mm-hmm.
So Tolkien grew up in a sort of a nice environment, and then he would move a lot of the time, and then he would grow up in this bad environment.
When you say bad environment, does that mean like, just is it city life?
Sort of city life, but it's more of pollution because it was during the Industrial Revolution, towards the end of the Industrial Revolution. So there was a lot of smoke and soot, and he would have had to go to work, and his mother worked, and she's a single mom, and she has nobody to support her.
Is that because her family
Her
didn't?
family disowned her, so in those days, if you were widowed, they would, if you came from a wealthy family, they would take care of you, especially if you didn't marry the wrong person. If you married the right person, they would have helped you and all that. You would have lived with your parents or maybe your married sibling, but
So back in those days, typically the families would support one another if you were widowed, um, or if you became a single mom. And but because she had converted to Catholicism, her entire family, and it sounds like his entire family, disowned her, and so she was on her own and ended up having to work in an industrial during the Industrial Revolution in Birmingham.
yes.
Oh wow, what did she do, and what did she do for a living?
I don't really know what she did.
Oh, okay.
I, I would guess maybe a laundry
Mm-hmm.
or working the machines.
Mm-hmm. A
Like,
seamstress, maybe even.
sort of. It's not
Mm-hmm.
like a small town business
Mm-hmm.
seamstress. It's like working in a factory
Yeah.
where it's basically more dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd cut yourself and
Sew your hand off or something
sew
like
your
that.
hand off, and then you would have you would get very little pay.
Wow. Wow. So, so how, where, where do you think happened? What about his mother?
Oh
How did
yeah.
she survive all this?
Well, she did not survive all
Oh,
this. One day she contracted diabetes
oh
and
no.
died.
Oh no. How old were her Hillary and uh J.R. How do you what's his name? I know I refer to him as Tolkien.
J.R.R. Tolkien,
Yeah.
John Ronald
Okay,
Reuel
I'll call them
Tolkien.
John and Hillary. So, how old were John and Hillary at the time of the death of his mother?
I would say um about 10 years or 12 years.
That's really sad. That makes me sad. I wouldn't ever want that to happen because now his father has passed away and his mother, and there's no family. So, how do they survive this?
Well, they didn't go to an orphanage. In the mother's will, the legal guardian was the local priest, Father Francis Morgan, and he was the priest at their local church, and he helped out with the finances from time to time, and so she entrusted them into his care, though his duties as a priest did not allow him to sort of live with these two boys. So at first he entrusted them to the care of their aunt Beatrice Suffield, who was the least bigoted towards Catholics.
Mm-hmm.
Though she was later replaced because Tolkien found her burning uh, the mother's letters.
What were these letters?
They were just letters to her kids, or maybe letters between uh, the mom and the dad, but uh, Beatrice
Are they like
burned them.
journaling? of a sort, or like maybe prayers or something like that.
Stuff like that, or something.
Because I've written you guys letters, like just like, oh, you guys are like the greatest kids in the whole wide world, and
Yeah, stuff
yeah.
like that. Something that she didn't mail them to them when they were alive, but probably like, oh, after I die, I just want to write these letters to you so you know,
Like a memoir almost.
sort of. But their Aunt Beatrice burned these letters.
Okay, so
So uh, she was replaced, and Father Francis put them in the care of a Mrs. Faulkner. Uh,
mhm.
she ran a boarding house for children, I believe, or just people. But basically, back in those days, and uh, probably still to this day, there were these houses where people would rent and live, and it was a big house, and then a lot of people would live in that one house.
Yeah, I know that's kind of like New York. They have these, they don't call them boarding houses, but they do have these houses that are big enough for, several different people to rent out different rooms. So that's kind of what a boarding house was back then.
Yes.
Oh, how interesting. And how were they able to pay for that if they were just kids?
The church, the Catholic Church, paid for them to live there.
Wow, that's something else. That's great. So, tell me a little bit about uh, his Tolkien's education.
So Tolkien was educated at King Edward's School for Boys. It's a Birmingham school. It's a boarding school, sort of.
So,
They
did he
don't.
board there?
I don't think he boarded there.
Oh, okay. He stayed at the boarding house.
He stayed at the boarding house, and then he would go over to the school.
Hmm. What kind of school was this?
It was a private school. It's the stereotypical English private
Oh,
school.
where they have to wear like these stuffy clothes
Yeah,
and
they have to wear these stuffy clothes. I don't
mhm.
know whether
Their
they did.
uniforms, more than
Yeah, I
likely.
don't know whether or not they did beatings, but
More than likely.
more than likely at
Like,
that time.
if you got in trouble, they probably had a ruler. I don't know. That's my envision of a boarding school. When I think of boarding, I think of paddleboard. Like you're gonna get it. So, all right. So, what did he study? Did he study there, or how did he grow into his linguistic capabilities? Like, how does that work?
Well, I would say that a lot of things added to that. You had to learn at least a little bit of Latin and Greek and maybe even French at these boarding schools. And he was very good at it. He was able to master these tongues at
Wow.
a very young age. But what really got him into linguistics, when his mother was alive,
Hmm.
they had to live next to these railroad tracks, sort of,
Hmm.
which is, of course, a terrible place to live with
Hmm.
all
Yeah, the industrial fumes and all
the
that.
industrial fumes.
Hmm.
But uh,
Hmm.
when he would go home, he would uh, like see these trains, and there were these coal cars, and these coal cars had the destinations on them, and they were going to Wales. And he saw names like Natiglo and Segnahid and
Natigo and
Segnahid.
Segnahid.
And uh, they're not going to Spain or anything.
Hmm.
It's not Spanish names.
Hmm.
In England, if you ever go to England, know that you're not going to one country. You're going to many other countries,
Hmm.
and that's why they call it Great Britain and the
Hmm.
United Kingdom.
Hmm. Why is
So
that? Wait, okay. So if you go to England, you're going to many countries?
yes, you're
Why
going to
is
many
that?
countries. Well, because back in the day, England wasn't uh, people from England didn't come from England. They came from uh, Denmark. Uh, back in the days, though they didn't call them Danish, they weren't Danish. They were called the Angles, where you get the word English from.
Is that where you get Anglican religion too?
Anglican religion.
Oh.
Yes, that's why they call it Anglican. It's the English church.
Mhm.
So back in the day, these they were kind of like Vikings, but not Vikings.
Vikings, what do you know? The terrors of the sea. Sorry.
Sort of. They later had to fight the Vikings, but
Oh, okay.
they came over on their big boats
from
the Denmark area.
Oh, okay.
And so they basically took over the Celtic people and sort of intermarried with them, and they became the English. But at the corners and in Scotland, the rest of the what you would call British people, which has a slight difference between the English.
Okay, I'm learning something here. I never knew this, that the British and English were two different cultures.
They were two different cultures. British were Celtic. English were Germanic.
Okay.
Though they're sort of intertwined now.
But the British and the English are both Anglican.
No. Well, in religion, and yes, and today, but when the English people came over, they pushed these few remaining British people to the sides of the countries and sort of the peninsulas and stuff. So you get this one country in the southwest of England, and it's called Wales. In this peninsula, some people there, they don't speak English. They speak what's called a Brythonic language. Brythonic.
Okay, so I'm so lost now. You lost me.
Okay, so
we were on, the last I heard, we were realizing that I don't even remember. All I hear is that we're in the peninsula.
So the English people came over from Denmark, from what's now called Denmark.
Okay.
They took over the British Isles.
Okay.
And when they were taking over the British Isles, they pushed some of the remaining British people onto these peninsulas.
Okay.
And in those peninsulas, some people didn't speak English.
Okay.
They spoke what's called a Brythonic language, which was the language that they were using before the English came over.
Okay.
And
I'm interested in what that is and how that sounds.
And with this...
so it doesn't sound like this.
It doesn't sound like that.
At all?
At all. It doesn't even sound like what we're saying now. It wasn't an accent. It was sort of...
An actual whole language?
It was an actual whole language. And in these little pockets of these peninsulas, it's like called Welsh and Cornish.
Wow, we're really geeking out right now. Welsh and Cornish.
And they would have these words like...
I know what Welsh is, but when I think of Cornish, I just have to think of corn.
Yeah, so Cornwall is... it's like when you see England, you know that little thing that goes to the west, that little tip?
I'll have to look it up on a map.
But at that little tip, at the far end of that little tip is this little sliver of land, and it's called Cornwall, and that's where all the Cornish people live, and they speak Cornish.
Do they grow corn?
No.
Oh, okay.
Corn meaning corn as in corner.
Oh, okay, thank you. Cornwall.
Cornwall.
Okay, now I get... Oh, because corn came from America. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so in Wales and Cornwall, they speak these Brythonic languages.
Okay.
And some people still speak them to this day. And so when Tolkien saw these cars going from Birmingham to Wales, he saw the names of it, and they were in Welsh. And Welsh sounds very different from English. It has these key features, and it's like nactagilo or something, and it has the sort of sound in it, which English does not have. That's why...
That's almost kind of even like a Middle Eastern thing.
Sort of. It's not Middle Eastern. It comes from the same family as English, but it's a distant cousin.
Okay.
So we get our name Floyd from it, which was originally the Welsh Llwyd.
Llwyd?
Llwyd.
So instead of saying Pink Floyd, I should say Pink Llwyd.
Well,
okay,
Pink
anyway.
Floyd is his name now, and he's not Welsh, so...
Oh, okay. Okay, so he's looking at these trains go by, or whatever they are, and he's seeing them. Is he memorizing them? Does he even know how they sound, or is he thinking what he thinks they sound like?
He knows, he has a pretty good idea what they sound like, because he associated those words with fairy tale-like words, because when you read fairy tales, some of them come from Wales, and with those you'll get Welsh names. A bunch of them come from the King Arthur tales.
Oh,
So,
okay. Wait, okay, help me out here. So King Arthur was written, when was that written? Did
Okay.
he read King Arthur?
Every boy at that time at least knew about King Arthur.
Okay.
It was basically like you knew it before you were a tween.
Oh, okay.
So King Arthur was written sort of after the English invaded, but it's commonly believed that the stories came from the pre-English invasion. So they're mainly British works, and they come from their Great Britain tales.
Yeah, because there were castles back in the day, in the day, and they
sort of not. It was those are inventions of after the English. They sort of adapted it to fit in with the days they were at. So the closest we can get is to that time is a Roman fort.
Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, I didn't know that. This whole time I thought there were English castles all over the place, and that in these castles at one time there lived kings and queens, because I just think of the
Well,
Queen
there was
of England.
kings and queens, but it wasn't King Arthur. King Arthur
No,
was...
I know. King Arthur, isn't King Arthur just a story?
King Arthur was probably a real person, but yeah, he wasn't really a king. He was more of a sort of war leader who would push, at the time, he would try to push the Angle people out. He basically, when he died, the Angles took over.
So King Arthur is a real person?
It's speculated.
Okay, so here Tolkien is, a young boy. He's living by the train tracks. So he's probably bored, probably worked hard, probably just, one thing that I've heard, and I don't know if this is true, but I heard that he has autism, or Asperger's, that could have, because of his, what do they call it? Special interest in languages and world building. And I could just totally picture him stimming on every single, train, what do you call those? Boxcars going by, trying to figure out what these languages are on. And if, I don't know, like you said, as far as did he know the language or about it, or is he really just figuring it out somehow?
I think he was figuring it out somehow. I think that
That's amazing.
Maybe he would go and ask his mom or his teachers, where does this word come from? And then they would say, oh, it's Welsh. It's like that little country in the corner.
So once he found out it was Welsh, he maybe even got himself a Welsh dictionary, or somehow he figured out how to teach himself another language then.
Sort of. He was very limited in that, but he knew a lot about it.
That's so, well, he's also going to school. I'm sure, like you said, he probably went and asked his teachers. So let's get on to another topic with, well, his growing linguistic capabilities. That's probably, one of the things. How did he get into creating his own languages? Now, this is an interesting. We already know that he is just, his special interest is linguistics. So, how did he get into actually creating his own languages?
He first began with Pig Latin languages,
I
sort
didn't know
of.
there were more than one.
Well, you would say that they're called nursery languages, and it's
Mhm.
just like Ukle in the Agbe, and you just like say it, and it's look in the bag.
Ukle in the what?
Agbe.
Ukle in the Agbe.
And then he made sort of a pidgin or something like that. It was just basically a bunch of Latin words mixed together.
He created Pig Latin, or
No, he made Pig Latin-like languages, and then he
oh,
got
okay.
into creating this sort of fake language based off of Latin words. He would just put all these Latin words together,
Is that
and
okay
maybe
to do?
if you're a kid, but if you're trying to make a real language, you just don't put words.
Okay.
So he would just put these words in, and then he would talk about it. And then later on in life, he would sort of create what is called a conlang, which is a constructed language. And if you just know the basics of linguistics, you can make your own language.
Ooh, I'd like to do that because then I can talk to, if I taught my kids, then nobody would know what we were saying if we need to tell each other secret messages. Wouldn't that be cool? Like,
Yeah.
hey, come over here when you want to say like something. I don't know. Okay, so let's talk about, maybe, I know he had clubs. Let's talk about his clubs. Like what did he do in these clubs, and what were these clubs about?
Okay, so he had 3 clubs in his life. The first club he made was called the TCBS, which was the Tea Club and Barovian Society.
Oh, okay, so I know what a tea club is. Uh, I'm assuming that you're drinking all sorts of tea and
Mm-hmm.
maybe reading books. What is the Barovian?
Barovian is either like this accent,
Mm-hmm.
but most likely, and I think Tolkien said it himself, uh, the area that they usually met were tea shops in what is called the Barrows. So it's the Barovian Society. The Barovian Society.
Okay, so they went to these tea shops called the
It,
Barovian.
it was these tea shops in what is called the Barrows, and
Oh, the
they put
Barrows is
V.
where?
They were in Birmingham.
Oh, okay. And so how old are they, going and doing this?
They were tweens to adults. They did it
Whoa.
from their tweens
Could
to
you
adults.
imagine as a teenager just going into this little tea shop every day and sitting around talking about,
They would talk about books and poetry and stuff like that.
so they were geeks.
They were geeks.
Okay, Geek Squad for sure. Did he have a girlfriend? I mean, hanging out with boys all day can get kind of boring after a while. Well, teenagers, they don't care, but did he ever have any girlfriends or a wife or
Well,
anything?
in the boarding house that he lived in, uh, on the floor below him was a girl. Her name was Edith. She probably hates this. She would probably hate this name. Her last name was Bratt.
Edith Bratt? Oh my
And they
goodness.
sort
Okay.
of met each other being brats.
Oh no, what were they? Mischievous
They were stealing
teenagers?
food
From where?
from like the kitchen or dining table. Him and his brother were really hungry, so they convinced her to sort of get these foods and what she would do is she would hoist them up through her window all the way to their window.
Oh, okay. So was she on the bottom?
I
She
think
was.
she was on the bottom, they were on the
So
top.
she figured out how to put a rope to where it, is pulled up to their window.
Yeah, they pulled it up to their
They
window.
were
They
just
would have the
hungry
food.
teenage boys.
They were just
I'm assuming that
hungry,
they ate.
hungry teenage boys,
Hmm.
and they had to eat.
Hmm.
So they go to this girl,
Hmm.
and she gets them extra food.
Wow.
Yeah, but they were caught.
Oh, not good. Of course, because, usually teenagers get caught because
they
they're not very bright
they were they were sort of
when it comes to food anyway.
they were sort of mischievous children.
Like all children
They
can
would
be.
throw sugar cubes into the hats of uh, people walking by.
What does that do?
I don't know. They just did it for fun. They were bored.
Oh, we used to throw firecrackers into the street while cars were driving by.
Well, that
Don't ever do
I
that.
don't think that's a good
That
idea.
you can get arrested for that and put in jail. And why we never got caught, or why somebody didn't ever drive around and kick our booties, I have no idea. But thank God. What did they do for fun? I mean, like, did they ever get out of the books? Their noses out of the books?
One day, Father Francis told Tolkien not to see Edith Bratt
Why
because
not?
it was because he was kind of she was kind of distracting him from his studies, and
Mm-hmm.
he couldn't get into Oxford the first time. And on top of that, she wasn't a Catholic, and then on top of that,
Well,
uh,
was she Anglican?
yeah, she was Anglican. Everybody was
Whoa.
Anglican. But also on top of that, there was sort of 4-year difference between them. So I wouldn't.
Whoa. He was older?
He was younger.
Oh, she was the older one.
She
Oh,
was the
wow.
older one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
So
he probably thought she was a bad influence on him.
sort of, yeah. At that time,
Oh, okay.
Father Francis thought she was a bad influence on him. One day, Tolkien had an invitation from one of his friends to go on a walking holiday in Switzerland.
Wait. Did you just say walking holiday?
Yeah, walking holiday.
What is that?
Okay, so holiday in British English means vacation.
I didn't even think English people had holidays.
Well, they don't have holidays, but they have, unless you count in Guy Fawkes Day, but uh, they had they have vacays.
Vacation days.
Basically, they have vacays, and they don't call it vacation; they call it holiday.
Oh my goodness. Okay, that's confusing. So they're on this holiday walk, and what's the holiday called?
A walking holiday.
Oh, you said that. Sorry.
Yeah, so it's just this time when you just walk around the countryside and all that stuff.
Oh, Americans don't like holidays like that.
Well, because we don't have countrysides.
I wish we did. We have beaches, but people don't walk on the beach. They party on the beach here in America. So
Well,
I would prefer a walking holiday, to tell you the truth, but maybe that's because I'm old now.
yeah. So they went on a walking holiday, and it sort of inspired in his books this region in his books called the Misty Mountains.
Oh, he has books called Misty
No,
Mountains?
no, he has books, and a location in these books are called the Misty
What are the
Mountains.
books?
The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings.
Oh, those books. Oh, they're called the Misty. See, you would think that I was a Tolkien fan, or a Lord of the Rings fan, but I would just rather pretend to be. So the Misty Mountains are kind of a like a replica or representation of that walking holiday.
Yeah,
Oh, how
and
neat.
actually, he almost died during that walking holiday.
How do you die walking? Just taking a
Well, they
breeze
weren't
walk?
just walking in Switzerland; they were walking in the Swiss Alps.
Oh,
So
beautiful though.
it was beautiful, but
The hills are alive with the sound of music.
yeah,
Oh. Okay.
but sort of, they were going to the very big mountains.
Oh.
And, like, during that time, there would be avalanches, and he almost got caught in an avalanche.
Wow.
And, of course, there were no St. Bernards to come and save you.
Oh, that's crazy. How did he get out of that pickle?
I don't know, he just moved away or something.
Oh, look, dearie, an avalanche. I better step aside.
Yeah,
Step away.
and then he stayed at this sort of a valley place, and it was a nice place, and basically he based this town called Rivendell after it.
It's just a valley in the Swiss Alps?
It's a valley. It's got like two cliffs on each side, and in between those two large cliffs is this very nice valley.
Wow, and he's in his teens or college age?
Sort of a college age.
Okay, so he's a young adult and he's just kind of traveling and being adventurous and going on holiday dates and stuff in the Swiss Alps.
Well, I guess.
Okay, so I guess we're just going to close out with his education. For now, we're going to close out with his education at Oxford. And then next week we'll talk a few more things about just The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, and the later years of Tolkien. But let's just go ahead and close out with his education at Oxford for today.
It was nice at the beginning. He was learning Greek and Latin. But then he got a bad grade.
Wow, did he get an F?
No.
They didn't grade like that?
They didn't grade like that. It was just below, it was below good.
Ooh.
So.
Wow, why? What did he do? Was he just not paying attention? Or
I think he wasn't paying attention. I think he was thinking about Edith at that time.
Oh, that'll do it.
Yeah. So he got a lower grade, and then, like, he had to go from learning Greek and Latin to learning English languages.
Wow, how did he like that?
He actually liked it very much.
Ooh.
He learned this thing called Old English.
Oh, wow. Yes, that's hard. And when I think of Old English, and even, what is it? When I read just the regular King James, which is that Old English?
Well, that's not Old English.
That's
the Old English, which is basically early modern English.
Okay, so King James is early modern English?
Early modern English.
Whoa, then what is our English nowadays?
English.
Slang?
So, Old English, better known as Anglo-Saxon.
There's an Anglo in everything with this guy's story.
Yeah, so in Old English, it's basically, okay, I'll read something in Old English, and I want you to try to follow along, which you probably won't.
Okay, go ahead.
Chwercom merig, chwercom mago, chwercom madhum gifa.
Let me see if I could translate. Where come my dam? Where come madame? Where did you go off the cliff?
Well, I would say you got good on the where come, but basically it's like Old English is its own separate language.
Wow.
It's not like thou and thee. It's like wow and ye and stuff like that.
That's probably why a lot of English people have these very, very heavy accents. You think so?
Yeah, probably they have these heavy accents. Oh, but you may be thinking of Scots.
Probably.
Which is actually descendant from the Old English. It's sort of English's sister language, and it's Scottish, and it's basically, it didn't come from English, it came from Old English, and then they have these heavy accents, and
yeah, that sounds definitely
they
more
have
Scottish.
a lot of
Scottish.
They have a lot of they say things like this and
Yes,
and then you have no idea what they're saying.
Because when they start talking faster, huh?
Yeah, and people in England can understand them because they've been around them long enough. But basically, that's where that comes from.
But your average person that speaks English at all, they would have to tell you, can you slow down? Can you pronounce your words very, very, very slowly? So it's not like they're talking like this. It's more like a Scottish accent, and there's a lot of, almost Irishness to it.
No.
No? Oh, okay. All right.
It's very confusing.
Yeah, it is confusing. Well, I think we've had a nice, good, long talk about Tolkien's life, and we're going to close this up now. And until next time, geek out.